the work that you're seeing us do now, that for those of you who may have known us as an organization over the years, looks a little different. So I am an attorney by trade, and actually Cna was a client of mine prior to me coming on board about 3 years ago. I have an experience where I worked with the city of Detroit, and I've worked kind of in kind of the public sector and private sector in a number of capacities. And so I had the opportunity to join Cna as they were pivoting from kind of their historical role as a financial intermediary and tax credit syndicator to really deepening their work in a few select communities across our 9-state footprint to do kind of greater community development engagement and to do it in ways that reflect the needs of particular communities that we serve. So for Detroit, which is near and dear to me and where I reside and just have a lot of passion and connection for, made sense for me to try to assist Cna in making that pivot. And in doing so, we've kind of built upon our historic legacy of investment in the city of Detroit. So we've invested as a syndicator with a lot of foreign not-for-profit partners to create thousands of units of affordable housing. But as everyone who is connected to Detroit in any way knows, affordable housing, while it will continue to be a need and a priority for this city, there are other needs that we think that we need to step up and address, and we need to do so in a fashion that kind of builds on our history of investment, but also where we can fit in where other great organizations like many of you represented in this session are, right? And so part of what we're doing here as we kind of develop this strategy is to not come in and bring a solution that isn't needed, but to rather to engage and to listen and to collaborate. And so in doing so, we've maintained our focus on the creation and preservation of affordable housing, both rental housing and also opportunities for home ownership through rental housing that we produce through the tax credit and now have opportunities to create home ownership. And so we're partnered with CHN Housing Partners and with Opportunity Resource Fund to do that in some of the developments that we previously financed as single family scattered site developments. We're obviously partnered with the city on its preservation work, which brings us together in this format in which our asset management team is extending kind of its perspective, expertise, and passion for this affordable housing product to the broader community. The other area in which we're looking to add value is in community development capacity building. And we view capacity building as providing capital, but also providing kind of expertise, connections, relationships with emerging developers who are doing neighborhood level work. And so we've taken some assets that we have as an organization that we feel bring a lot of value, such as our nonprofit development arm, Cna Solutions, which some of you may have known as Building Blocks previously. And Cna Solutions represents an opportunity for us to partner with developers to extend their capacity to do community development, currently focused around LIHTC executions, but expanding to other forms of capacity building and support, particularly in the neighborhoods that we're working with. And we've identified a couple of neighborhoods that we're going to begin to deepen that work and target that focus. And again, doing so collaboratively. So we'll be looking to bring in partners to do that work in communities like Woodbridge and also the McDougal Hunt community over on the east side of Detroit. I would also say that our capacity building through lending is going to see us having opportunities for lending beyond that is associated with the tax credit. But we're building that, right? So we don't have the deep experience that some of the folks, as I look across the screen, have in some of that lending product and capacity, but we're building it. And we're, again, going to look to do so collaboratively. So for me, that means trying to find opportunities where our capacity building and TA doesn't seek to replicate the great work that Capital Impact's doing with emerging developers, but rather to work with those developers coming through those cohorts, building those relationships where we can find capital that meets their needs for community development. I'm going to also pause and say, if you guys can hear my kids in the background, I apologize for that, but you know, the school's out this week, so it sounds really loud to me. I hope it's not super loud to you. The final thing I'll say is that we have a developing program where I've found that in Detroit, there's certainly a need and an opportunity to engage high school students and expose them to career path opportunities and community development. So what does that mean? We are not looking to do what some of the great programs or to compete with things like Grow Detroit Young Talent. Really what we want to do is create a platform in which students can begin to be exposed to community development, to real estate development as not only a career path opportunity, but also as a means for participating in the changes that they see in the built environment and not feeling like gentrification is something that's coming and people are coming in to suck the value out of the neighborhoods, and that young people don't see it themselves as having a role in rebuilding their neighborhood. And so I'm very passionate about that. And it's something that we're beginning to implement in very subtle ways, where you'll begin to see on projects that we're working on, there will be students from Detroit Public Schools Community District that are doing their work-based learning opportunities alongside of us. And not just us, we're going to be reaching out to those that we partner with. So our co-development partners, some of whom are on this call, our collaborative partners in the CDFI space, we're going to be calling on you to look for ways in which you can also engage young people in exposure opportunities. You can't be it if you can't see it. If you don't get exposed to these opportunities to build wealth for your family, for your community, to think about how as a young person, you have a role in that and you are needed in that, we're going to continue to see the lack of capacity within community development. So I want people to be able to have a pipeline of young talent for their organization, so that Pat Bosch knows that there's young students that are interested in this space that she can have some impact with, and that they could come into this space. And so I try to very quickly kind of give you some context for why we're pulling you together today, for kind of where Cna is developing. You'll see folks that are beginning to complement our team. So our development team, our lending team, Aaron Grant, who is on this call, who's our community development loan officer. You'll continue to see the evolution of Cna in this fashion. And again, just very excited and glad that all of you joined us in this opportunity. And we look forward to continuing to work with you in partnership.
Excellent. Thank you, Lucius. I really appreciate that. I wish we would have done it like 2 sessions ago, but better late than never, right? And I got it recorded. I remembered to hit record. So just so everybody knows, I am recording this session. Lucius, I got it right before you started. So
Oh, cool.
I got it all on tape for you. So
all right, thank you. I may need that.
There you go. Exactly. So we'll get into the program here. First up to speak is Vic Alba from LISC. Vic, I think you're going to share your screen and you should have capability, but if you cannot, let me know.
Yeah, are you able to see that?
I can, yes.
Okay, it's all right. Is it a all right? Great. Should be a slideshow now, hopefully.
Yep, you're good to go.
So yep, I'm going to talk about the Detroit Housing for the Future Fund. I think most people know me, a lot of familiar faces, but I'm the preservation director at Detroit LISC, a local initiative support corporation. And the fund, this is a little bit of background, which I'm not going to go into great detail on, but you may have heard of the ALF, or Affordable Housing Leverage Fund. You'll see in the middle of this paragraph, that's still relating to the relationship that LISC has with the city of Detroit and MISHDA on this new fund to preserve affordable housing and create new affordable housing units as well. The Detroit Housing for the Future Fund, if you haven't heard of that yet, is kind of the portion that LISC is managing, the privately raised funds that we're raising and managing and distributing to projects. And I'll talk about our products in a minute, but that's kind of what the overview is and background. You hopefully are familiar at some level or another. These are the products that we're now offering through the new fund. 2 loan products: preferred equity, recoupled grant for capital needs assessments, and developers of color pre-development matching grants. But as you can tell, some from the products and from the introduction, preservation is an important part of this fund. It can address new construction or renovating a vacant building, but preservation of affordable housing or of NOAA type projects, naturally occurring affordable housing, are key aspects to the fund. I'm going to go through a lot of these slides quickly since we don't have tons of time today and we have other speakers behind me. But for the eligibility, of course, has to be in the city of Detroit, meet the affordability requirements, which vary slightly from product to product, but are pretty consistent. Proof of site control, and be either current on taxes or have some kind of payment plan with the county or what have you. In general, for our loan products, for-profit or nonprofit owners or sponsors of affordable housing are eligible to apply and be borrowers. Could be smaller or newer owners who are partnered with an experienced development consultant. This might come into play a lot for the NOAA projects, but maybe others as well. Encouraging deeper affordability. We'll go over the guidelines in a minute. excuse me, those affordability restrictions will be in effect for a minimum of the period of the loan term or the preferred equity, and then 5% developer equity for a nonprofit sponsor, or 5 to 10% for a for-profit. We'd certainly look for the higher number if possible. Each loan would be collateralized. There'd be either corporate or personal guarantees where applicable, recourse or allowable. Each loan will have a 1% origination fee and a legal fees reimbursable, pretty standard items there for a loan product. So on the senior and subordinate debt, this is the affordability requirements that are key. At least 50% of the units be at 80% AMI or below, but we're really encouraging deeper affordability than that. And as we said many times, actually, some of you might have heard me say this, or Brandon Ivory say this recently as we had outreach sessions for the fund in the last few weeks. Either more units at those affordability levels, or ideally deeper at 30, 40, or 50 or 60% AMI. And those are going to score higher in our rubric. And then we also want to preserve the existing affordability if it's already under a regulatory agreement or something like that. So that mix might certainly be lower. The senior debt can go up to $5 million, and all our loans are at 3% interest and up to currently a 14-year term post-construction, with a 30-year AM. So fairly generous terms, which is really a key part of the fund overall and why we worked with the city and Mishta to establish this. We're looking at projects of around 75 units or less, but that is not an exclusive or a hard number. Just that the dollar amounts probably won't work for much larger buildings, but we certainly encourage anybody to apply if you're looking at a project bigger and you think these products will work for you. Can be construction and mini perm, convert from one to the other after the construction period's over, can allow for refinancing of existing debt or acquisition, moderate to substantial rehab, a limited amount of new unit construction, meaning new construction or rehab of vacant buildings for these loans, up to 85% LTV. And then of course, the rest is fairly standard. So I don't want to spend tons of time on these, but the subordinate debt is very similar, except it would be just up to $2 million, whereas the senior goes up to $5 million, and then up to a 95% LTV, so a little bit more generous LTV if we're playing a subordinate role. The preferred equity is a little bit unique, so I want to spend a little bit of time on that. This slide, as far as the general parameters, are pretty much the same as the ones we went over with the debt products, other than the fact that guarantees and recourse are not applicable, since as an equity provider, we would be part of the ownership structure. So that's pretty comparable to the debt products. This is up to a $2 million number for up to 25-year term. However, since the fund is new and we're still fundraising, well, we've been quite successful. We're still in that mode and haven't reached our full target yet. We're looking at investments up to about 500,000, maybe 750,000. So please keep that in mind early in the fund. It just launched in September, if I didn't say that earlier. I'm just going to address some of the same types of projects. We can do new construction through this, and up to 100% combined debt in the project. That's more of a check to just determine general feasibility overall. It doesn't include the preferred equity amount. And then we would, of course, be part of the operating agreement, as I noted earlier. We would be negotiating that in terms of coming into the ownership structure. Repayment is based on an equity multiple, not an internal rate of return. If you're not familiar with that, we do have a spreadsheet on our website, which I'll show you in a minute, the address for, but it's under, I think, deal payments or something like that in the preferred equity section. And that'll help you model out how this works. In a nutshell, if the investment is $500,000 and the equity multiple is 1.2, then you multiply those and get 600,000. And during year one, 1% of the annual distributable cash flow will be the payment, so $6,000. It sort of works as an amortization like a loan. After that, you would deduct that 6,000 from the 600,000 number, get 594. So 1% of that would be due in year two. But again, the model on this, the spreadsheet model on the website kind of has all those formulas in there. So I don't want to dwell on that, but I'm happy to answer questions if people have them later on in the program. The payment is senior to any equity returns to the developer, but junior to any debt service payments on an annual basis, and then senior to any developer cash flow on a refinancing. Just a few other quick things. I noted that the AMI levels, affordability levels do vary a little bit from product to product. So because the preferred equity is a little bit more scarce, we are looking at a minimum, this is the inclusionary housing numbers, if you're familiar with that, 5% of units at 50% AMI and 15 at 60% AMI. Again, we're encouraging deeper affordability than that, but it is a little bit more than our debt products are in terms of the lower AMIs. And then another way we're looking at being good stewards of this money is to look at any mixed use projects with commercial space to have a portion of that reserved for minority-led businesses and entrepreneurs. So just one other kind of lens to look at in terms of equity and the scarcity of this product. Just quickly, in terms of preservation, we do have a Cna Recoupled Grant product. We also encourage green Cnas to look at energy efficiency. It covers the cost of a third party. We have a list of vetted vendors that you could ask for, but you could also bring one and we could see if that one works for you. Up to $25,000 over 2 years. It's a small $250 fee. It's repayable at the point of construction. A little bit smaller application packages associated with this. And this is the only one where single family scattered site projects are eligible. The loan and preferred equity right now are not eligible for single family scattered site. I know a few of you have projects in that vein. I recognize a few of you, but the loan and preferred equity are not going towards that at the current time. We have a developer of color matching grant for pre-development funds up to $100,000. Covers standard kind of pre-development expenses. So I won't go into this in detail, but we're available to talk about any of these in more detail. This is our process. Again, the quick overview is there's a pre-application that you can complete that triggers kind of a call or discussion with us to kind of talk about general parameters of the project. We look at just a basic source and uses and pro forma, no detailed analysis at that point. And then if that call goes well and we're comfortable, we can move it forward into the full application phase where we would go through our threshold review and scoring in a cohort with other projects coming in at that time. And we do have kind of rolling basis, but this is a year long. There's no like specific NOFA or dates, but we do have kind of windows of time where we would score projects in a cohort. We would then move into our intake process through a committee that we have internally at LISC, as well as the project review committee with the city's HRD department and MISTA in an advisory role. We can do a letter of interest at that point and hopefully help with some other sources that you may have pending. And then move into underwriting and approval. Assuming it does get approved, we can do a commitment letter and then move into closing and monitoring. This is, we do have some other sessions where we go through these in more detail. We just had them, as I mentioned, a couple of weeks ago. So stay tuned for April, June, August, and October if you wanted to learn more or if you have a project at that time. This is my contact information as well as Brandon Ivory that many of you know, who's the loan officer on the fund. And this is the website, which is just the whole fund name spelled out. And the application portal, you can access through that. So I know I've moved pretty quickly. We have a lot of speakers, so I will let Mike turn it over to the next person, but happy to answer questions later, or we're available for phone calls and emails. I should say one thing, Mike, sorry. These are our work numbers, but we do have an app that rings to our cell phones. We're still working remotely, so feel free to use those and it will connect to us. So,
Excellent. Thanks, Vic. That's great. Does anybody have any questions off the bat for Vic? And there was a question, Isaac put a question in the chat. I will send out the slides to everybody. I have copies of them, so I will send them out. And I will also include all of our speakers' contact information. I know that's one of the big takeaways from today too, is so you know who to actually call when you're looking for these things. So I will put both of those in an email and blast them out after the session is over. Next up is Adam Gold from Bellwether Capital. Adam, fire away.
Thanks, Mike. My name's Adam Gould. I'm with Bellwether Enterprise. I'm going to go ahead and try to share my screen here. that work okay? Or,
Yep, you're good to go.
good.
Oh, it fell off now. Now I'm showing your,
Oh, did it?
I'm showing just your background screen there. Oh, there you go. Now you're back.
Good. And I apologize, I have two screens here, so I'm going to be looking at the opposite screen. But anyway, so Bellwether Enterprise, we're a nationwide company. We're a commercial mortgage banking firm. So the first thing we do, first and foremost, is lend money for commercial real estate and multifamily projects. Our ownership is very unique. We're actually 45% owned by Enterprise Community Partners, who I'm sure a lot of people on this call recognize. 30% of Bellwether Enterprise is owned by our private partners here. And then over the last 12 months, we actually brought in one more piece with Fifth Third Bank, which allows us to synergize with them. At Bellwether, we're going to always be more focused on permanent lending. What we typically do is most of the loans that we provide are, call it 10 to 40 years, non-recourse. Somebody like Fifth Third Bank or some of the other lenders on this call might be more focused on short-term financing. But through our family of companies, we have substantial tools for affordable housing, for multifamily in general, and then commercial real estate as well, whether that be office, industrial, retail. We finance kind of the whole spectrum. And through our family of companies, we also just finance the whole spectrum, not only of commercial real estate, but terms, and I'll get into it in a second, but we have the ability sometimes to even provide joint venture equity. So I mentioned our 45% owner is Enterprise Community Investment. Since 1982, they've deployed $52.9 billion into the affordable housing space. They're actually, sorry, I got an email that came in here. I apologize, but they are an affordable housing company. They're a 501c3. And we synergize with them a lot. A lot of people on this call probably know Melinda Clemens, who is the senior director for Enterprise Detroit. And I synergize a lot with her, and she's a great resource for us. This is just to give you a sense. We have over 30 offices nationwide. I'm the manager of our Michigan office. And while we have offices throughout the country, I focus on Michigan first and do a lot of deals in the city of Detroit proper. This is just to show you our commercial loan or commercial mortgage production for last year. We funded over 7 billion commercial mortgages. I think the places to focus here for the purpose of this call are right here, where we have the 3.8 billion of agency production. That's HUD, Fannie and Freddie, to a lesser extent USDA, which is more for rural financing. But a big portion of what we do, and the majority of the loans that we fund, are through HUD, Fannie and Freddie, which, as I think everybody knows, that they are very mission focused. And not only can we do conventional multifamily financing through them, but they're big proponents of affordable housing, seniors housing, seniors affordable housing, and kind of down the line. This is just to give you a sense for our current servicing portfolio. It's roughly $33 billion. I would say, given where we're at in our company life cycle, I would say that most of the time, where some of the other people on the call will look at smaller deals, I would say that for financing opportunities, whether that's a permanent loan, a construction loan, maybe even a rehab type loan, I would say that we probably want to keep our loans above $3 million. So while we might start at 3 million, the good news is we can go as big as we need to, depending on how large the sponsor is. And for the purposes of the city of Detroit, I would say once you get over 50 million, there's going to be a lot more scrutiny, but we have the capacity for affordable housing and conventional housing to go north of 50 million if we need to. I mentioned before, I think the most important thing to focus on with all of our tools that we have is really our agency production. As I mentioned, 3.8 billion of it in 2020. This includes Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA, and again, to a lesser extent, USDA. You'll see here that with Fannie and Freddie, we do conventional multifamily, affordable housing, small balance, again, usually above 3 million, but we also do a lot of MHC financing or manufactured housing financing, and then seniors housing. What's really interesting, I mentioned we can do construction lending through Fifth Third, but we can also do construction lending through FHA/HUD through their HUD 221D4 product. And that particular product is for HUD with the 221D4 is a 42-year loan, which is inclusive of 2 years interest only. With rates right now, we're currently with affordable MIP that's required to ensure the financing rates are right around 3% for a 42-year deal. You have a lot of hoops to jump through for the financing, but at the end of the day, it's a great way to take refinance risk off the table, and also the guarantees are pretty limited. On the permanent side, when we talk about Fannie and Freddie, our standard deals that we do for conventional would be a 10-year term with a 30-year amort. Whether we're doing LIHTC or more truly capital A affordable financing, we can go up to as high as 85 or 90% loan to value. Our amortizations can go out as far as 35 years. Sorry, there's some ice falling out my window. I apologize. But it's, across the board, when we talk about Fannie, Freddie, and HUD, they're great ways to finance multifamily. They're great ways to finance affordable housing. And that's a pretty good overview. Oh, sorry. I came out of the presentation. So I didn't include, I know Mike mentioned he was going to share everybody's contact info after this. I did not include my full contact info here, but my email is on here. So with that, one other note I just wanted to make here is in the current year here in 2021, with the caps that Fannie and Freddie have, and HUD is always going to be more focused on truly affordable deals, but specifically for Fannie and Freddie, they've really changed their cap guidance for the year, and they're, when they hit their volume caps, they really can't do any more conventional business, but they're really more so than ever mission driven, and they really want to be cherry picking more of the capital A affordable deals, but also the naturally occurring workforce housing that might have, call it 80% AMI on even 20 to 50% of the units. So, I guess just to summarize here, with all the tools that we have, we're as focused as ever on affordable housing, in addition to conventional housing and traditional commercial real estate, and would love to help anyone out who's looking for it. So not sure if anybody had any questions, but we can always ask them at the end too.
Thanks, Adam. Does anybody have questions specifically for Adam? Must be got it all in there, nice and compact. So next up, Nick Pohl from Capital Impact is going to talk about what they've got going on.
Great, thanks, Mike. Can everybody see my PowerPoint?
Yep, it's showing on my screen.
Okay, great. So nice to see everybody. As Mike said, I'm Nick Cole with Capital Impact Partners. I oversee our business development in the Midwest. Historically, we've been very Detroit focused, and over the last 18 months, we've been expanding our reach to all of Michigan and Northern Ohio. And we're excited to be here as part of this presentation today. So our geographic focus area is shown here. Capital Impact is a national social justice organization and a nonprofit mission-driven lender. We're headquartered in Arlington, Virginia, near Washington, D.C., and have 4 other offices in Oakland, California, New York City, Austin, Texas, and Detroit. In Detroit, we've been lending since 2011. We actively launched an office in Detroit in 2014, and we now have 11 staff that cover loan originations, programmatic solutions, and technical assistance. We have 4 strategic pillars. In Detroit, we're very focused on equitable and inclusive growth. Some of you may know that in 2017, we launched the Equitable Development Initiative, a robust program that offers mentorship, training, and capital solutions for emerging developers of color. To date, we have 67 graduates from that program. We offer a wide variety of real estate capital solutions, including pre-development financing, bridge financing, construction financing, mini-perm financing, and permanent financing. These are our primary areas of focus and expertise. In Detroit, we have been primarily focused on affordable housing, as well as increasing access to quality education and healthy foods, as you'll see on the next slide. This slide shows an overview of our lending in Detroit, which crossed the $250 million threshold last year, which was our 10th year working in the city. Capital Impact specializes in creating specific lending initiatives or loan funds to address financing gaps. In Detroit, this has included the creation of the Woodward Corridor Investment Fund, the Detroit Neighborhoods Fund, the Michigan Good Food Fund, a Detroit Pre-Development Fund, the Diversity and Development Detroit Loan Fund, which we launched this past summer, and an Affordable Housing Fund, which I'll talk about next. So our Capital Magnet Fund is one of our local lending initiatives that targets affordable housing and mixed income developments with a deeply affordable housing component. The Capital Magnet Fund program was created by the U.S. Department of Treasury. Every year, the CDFI Fund awards grants to CDFIs and nonprofit housing organizations to support the preservation and creation of quality affordable housing units. Capital Impact received a $4.8 million grant, which we leveraged with our own balance sheet capital to create a $48 million affordable housing fund in Wayne County, Michigan. In order to qualify for financing through this fund, the project needs to be located in Wayne County. It has to be a multifamily or mixed-use development that is primarily housing. And the residential units have to meet the 3 affordability criteria outlined in this slide, which are all of the units below 120% of the AMI, half of the units below 80% of the AMI, and at least 20% of the units between 30 to 50% of the AMI. In addition, the affordability is deed restricted for a period of 10 years to ensure preservation of affordable housing. So next, I'll go over 2 examples of how the funds can be used. The first example shown here is Cougan Terrace. This formerly public housing project went through a RAD conversion. That's a rental assistance demonstration conversion, which is a tool of HUD. This tool allows public housing agencies to preserve and improve public housing properties to address deferred maintenance. The $16 million renovation was recently completed and was primarily financed through 9% LIHTC. Our partner on here today, Cna, was the equity investor. However, there was still a gap. As you know, there are typically gaps with LIHTC projects. For this project, we were able to provide a gap or permanent loan of $1.2 million through our Affordable Housing Fund. The second example is the creation of new affordable housing units through the ground up construction of a new mixed-use development called Parker Durand. Capital Impact and its participant, LISC, who's also on the line, provided a $14 million senior construction and permanent loan with flexible terms in order to allow for over half of the new 92 units to be offered with affordable rental rates ranging from 50 to 80% of the AMI. In addition, the affordability is preserved over a 10-year period. I'd also like to note that in order to make sure the project was financially viable, there was a significant investment from our other partner, Cna Cowan, who you'll hear from next with Invest Detroit, and also the Michigan Strategic Fund. Finally, I'd just like to talk about some of the loan terms that we're able to offer through this loan fund. We're able to offer construction and permanent financing with loan amounts ranging from $1.5 million to $8 million, in some instances larger, as you saw with the Parker Durand project, so long as we have participants. We're able to offer up to a 30-year amortization, up to a 15-year loan term, up to 90% loan to cost or loan to value with a 10% minimum equity contribution. And we're also able to offer reduced pricing from our standard balance sheet pricing. Finally, the projects must at least have a debt service coverage ratio of 1.15 times, and we are a recourse lender. So I'm happy to take any questions now, or you can reach me by email or phone shown here.
Thanks, Nick. Does anybody have questions specifically geared towards Nick at this point? All right, hearing none, like I said, we'll have those slides for everybody. It'll be good to digest later. Next up is Cna Cowan from Invest Detroit. Oh, Cna, you're on mute.
Cna, you're muted.
It would be I that would not follow the proper directions and make sure that I'm off mute. I assume you can see my screen, however.
Yes.
It's a lovely picture of me that I hate blasting. But nonetheless, Invest Detroit. Thank you, Nick, for that shout out. I'll certainly cover Parker Durand in just a moment. But Invest Detroit is a community development financial institution that is really focused on 4 pillars, that being commercial real estate, mainly mixed use, mixed income, multifamily in commercial corridors, with a very targeted effort at greater downtown from a geography perspective, as well as the 10 strategic neighborhoods as part of our public-private philanthropic partnership with the city of Detroit. We also fund commercial and industrial, so the middle, medium, and large small businesses, as well as the small businesses 2 to 50 employees, brick and mortar primarily. And then we also have a venture capital team that is really focused on high growth, high tech, seed, pre-seed, early stage revenue businesses throughout the state of Michigan. You know, our primary focus really is on creating density, jobs, thriving neighborhoods, and inclusivity, which is why we work so closely with LISC, Capital Impact, and other partners that are on this line as we focus on the holistic approach of community development and economic development. Just to kind of recap our impact, we're probably the smallest of the groups here represented as far as the financing capital stack, but we bring that with a mighty punch. And so this just simply recaps how the impact that we've had through 2020 with the amount of deployment and leveraging, as well the spaces that we've been able to be supportive of. And you will see here that when we get down to the housing number of 5,000, roughly 5,100 residential units, only 16% of that is affordable. Frankly, we are not and have not served in a traditional role as affordable housing lender. We are more about being supportive, being that gap lender, that but-for lender in all types of transactions. And so I will say that although we're not an affordable lender, Nick Pohl just mentioned one particular project, being Parker Duran, where there was a significant affordability component to the project, as well as others like Kemper and Stevens, which is 100% deed restricted, 4% transaction for seniors in downtown Detroit. And so with that in mind, Invest Detroit doesn't necessarily have a significant amount of parameters that we set because we are trying to be that but for lender. And so we support projects on a real estate basis through acquisition, pre-development, construction, term loans, as well as bridge of tax credits, bridge of state and local funding sources with pricing or sizing range from 150 to $2.5 million. We are certainly a collateralized lender, so we are looking to have a senior or a subordinate role. Here it articulates what our loan pricing and some of our fees are, just in case there are questions there, as well as our loan terms. So when we think about but for gap mezz debt lender, right? That lender that helps to make a deal happen, it's usually short-term dollars, right? So we look at, anywhere from, 6 months being, an acquisition or pre-development loan to as much as a 7-year facility. 25 years is typically our longest amortization on a construction and mini term loan. However, we have made exceptions for deals that make sense from an impact and a perspective to go as much as 30-year amortization. Eligible borrowers can be just pretty much anyone that's in the real estate development arena. We do work very closely with Capital Impact's Equitable Developer Initiative cohorts, as well as others coming from other training programs. So we do deal with emerging developers. We do have a small technical assistance component that comes along with getting financing as an emerging developer. So we'll deal with the most experienced. I will also note that this is less impactful, but just something I'd like to share. Invest Detroit is also a CDE, meaning that we, from time to time, when the CDFI fund awards it, are recipients or allocatees of the new market tax credits, which in a lot of cases, structured properly can be paired with low-income housing tax credits and other affordable structuring facilities. Other than that, I'm going to keep it short and sweet because we've got a lot of information that you all have digested here. I will talk about the Strategic Neighborhood Fund. I do want to mention that as well. That is a tool, again, as I mentioned, part of our public-private partnership. I'll scroll down to make sure we can see all of the specific neighborhoods here. A part of our public-private partnership, philanthropic partnership with the city of Detroit, where we're focused on 10 strategic neighborhoods, that being Island View, Jefferson Chalmers, East Warren Cashew, Gratiot 7 Mile, Joseph Campo, the Campo and Banglatown, Livernois McNichols, Russell Woods, Warren Cody Rouge, and Grand River Northwest. Those are the 10 strategic neighborhoods. That also has a 4-pillar approach to the initiative, that being streetscapes, catalytic parks, single-family home initiative, and the commercial corridor. Invest Detroit drives the commercial corridor efforts, where the Strategic Neighborhood Fund dollars can be used as and to support projects in an environment where there is non-serviceable gap, intended to lift the market, develop the market, appreciate, and then at some point, hopefully be able to repay it in the form of a recoverable grant. Those are severely limited dollars and limited resources, but they are specifically tied to projects that are in micro districts within these 10 specific neighborhoods to, again, spark that investment, create a wildfire of development and interest in the market, such that there is appreciation and self-sustainability in those particular areas. And so the other thing that I would say when we're thinking about and funding multifamily mixed use developments is we are also bringing our tools of being supportive of the small businesses and the nonprofits that are populating that commercial and retail space in order to further stabilize and create a 20-minute walkable neighborhood in those respective communities. With that, I am going to turn it back over to you, Mike, and lead us in any questions.
Thanks, Kiana. That was excellent. Does anybody have questions specifically for Kiana at this point? All right, hearing none, I will turn it over to Chad Benson from MISTA to talk about the litany of affordable products that they have over there.
Sounds good. Thanks, Mike. So I realize I'm the only one that does not have a presentation, but hopefully I can make up for it with some detail on our programs. And we have a lot of information on our website as well that you can go out and explore. But us as MISTA, we do a lot of deals all over the state. We're the state housing agency, so we serve the whole state, but we do a significant amount of multifamily development in the city of Detroit through our three basic multifamily development programs. And I'll go into a little bit more detail on those three. So the three programs that we have in multifamily are really the 9% tax credit program, our 4% tax credit direct lending program, and then the 4% tax credit pass-through program. And basically every single, multifamily development deal that's looking for financing from MISTA or funding from MISTA will sort of be funneled into any one of those programs, any one of those three programs, depending on sort of the characteristics of the deal and where it fits best. All of them, with the exception of the pass-through program, are very competitive right now. So it really is sort of it's a process where a developer or an owner sort of has to probably figure out where they think they fit best in terms of being the most competitive to get their deal done. From a 9% tax credit perspective, that's the program where we develop a qualified allocation plan every 2 years. And it's really the program that I think most everybody thinks about when they think about low-income housing tax credits is the 9% resource. And it really is one of the most powerful and valuable resources we have as a state, as an agency, but as a state just in general for developing affordable housing. Typically, it composes about 80% or more of the capital stack for deals. So, it definitely, it's sort of the difference between deals working and deals not working a lot of times in that regard. And because it's such a valuable resource, we have a lot of demand from developers all over the state for project proposals all over the state for that resource. We actually just had a funding round deadline on February 1st, and we got 72 applications in for that funding that we have available. And we have about $28 million of funding available in that program. But there's no way we're going to be able to, fund all those deals that are submitted. So the way that we go through and we figure out which deals we're going to fund is we have a scoring criteria that essentially ranks those deals and all those deals from all over the state and determines which ones will be competitive. For the 9% program right now, we're right in the middle of sort of making some revisions to that qualified allocation plan. The next funding round date hasn't been scheduled yet. Typically, it's been an October 1, April 1 funding round schedule. So it's very possible the next one could be October 1 of this year. But we haven't set that yet, just because we haven't been sort of far enough through that QAP revision process to establish it. But no, again, the 9% program, it's one of the most competitive programs we have, but it's because the resource is so valuable. And I'd be happy to go into more detail on that program. But really, any project could potentially be one that we fund through that program. We do a lot of new construction, we do preservation, we do permanent supportive housing, we do adaptive reuse, historic, basically any type of deal that sort of meets all those metrics and is competitive and scores high is one that we would do. So it has a lot of flexibility built within it. The next program that I touched on a little bit that I want to talk about a little bit more is our direct lending program. And this is the program that a lot of people think about when they think about like a MSHDA mortgage or a MSHDA loan. The program is really, it's a program where when we review the deal and we underwrite the deal, we're looking at putting a tax exempt bond loan on that deal. And that's a permanent, a lot of times it's a construction converting to a permanent loan. We have a 40-year amortization. Our interest rates are actually just in the process of dropping right now. They were 4.25%, and they're going to be 3.95 going forward. So they're getting better here. And along with that permanent loan that we put on the deal, which is an amortizing first mortgage, we also, those deals, because it's a tax exempt bond loan, they can qualify for the 4% tax credit, which is now a fixed 4% tax credit for all deals going forward, which is a good benefit, getting deals more equity. And then also, if a deal needs gap resources, we do provide gap funding soft resources to developments too, in the form of federal resources or just MSHDA resources that we have available. So those gap resources are the piece of it that is extremely competitive. Just like the 9% credit, we only have a limited amount of gap resources we can provide. So to the extent that a project is looking to get a MSHDA loan and 4% credits, and they need gap resources to be able to be feasible, they have to come in and they have to compete with other deals that are looking for those gap resources as well. We have a notice of funding availability for those gap resources going on right now. We have, I think, about 28 deals that have applied for $8 million of resources. So it is extremely heavily oversubscribed. And so it just kind of shows the value and the demand for those resources. And I think in that round 13 NOFA, we have 10 deals from the city of Detroit that are located within the city of Detroit. So a lot of deals located in Detroit that have applied for those resources as well. And then the last program, I think the third one that I want to touch on is the pass-through program. Now, this is a program that I think folks that have worked in other states, you probably have seen in other states that this is basically the only lending program that they have. And for us, it's an option, but it's not our only program. But essentially, it's a program where we make tax exempt bond cap available to be utilized in projects. And what that does is projects can use that bond cap and they can qualify for the 4% tax credit. Sometimes between those two resources, that's enough to make a deal feasible. It doesn't work for every deal. It's probably the toughest to make a deal work under that program. And that's why it's really the least competitive. But we do have it available for developments that can utilize it. And over the course of the last year or so, we have had about 5. Well, there's been a number of different projects that have utilized it, but I think about 4 or 5 separate transactions that have come in looking to utilize that, and we've made bond cap available to be able to have those deals get done using that program. So I think that kind of gives a basic overview of the three sort of large programs that MISTA has that I think a lot of people really think about. You know, it's usually one of those three programs that are sort of the cornerstone for a development when they're looking to put together an affordable housing deal. And be happy to talk more about those programs, answer any questions about them. Like I said, we have a lot of resources on our website around those three different programs in terms of the funding plans and the parameters, like our lending parameters and various things like that. If you're interested in how those financing tools can sort of fit within your deal. So.
Thanks, Chad. There is one chat that was sent to me, or one question in the chat sent to me from Warren. And Warren, you can feel free to expound if you don't get the answer from Chad that you want. It says, is there a minimum practical size of project for the three programs, especially pass-through bonds?
You know, we don't set like a minimum size. We you know, typically, especially with a pass-through, I would say typically you're going to be looking at larger deals that are probably going to work better with that program, just because of sheer economies of scale and more units to sort of spread the financing costs over. It's going to a lot of times make the deal work. However, knowing that there's a lot of different aspects of projects that can sort of, you know, sway the numbers in one way or the other, it's very possible that a small deal could work, or if the deal has gap financing or has a certain characteristic to it that sort of makes it work, we definitely, you know, wouldn't be opposed to doing a smaller deal than normal, or, you know, anything like that. It's basically whatever makes the numbers work, especially in the pass-through program, is what we would consider. And to the extent it's a 9% deal, it'd have to score out and everything too. So I guess a short answer would be that typically, especially with the pass-through program, a lot of times when I see it, it is the larger deals that are sort of, it caters to better. But that's not to say that we would ever, you know, dissuade anybody from wanting to apply with a smaller deal if that deal works. So what is larger? Looks like one of the questions. So yeah, and again, it sort of depends. But the developments that we have in right now for the pass-through program, a lot of them are over 100 units. And there's one of them that was like a portfolio deal where it was packaging a lot of different, actually rural developments throughout the state. So there was a lot of units in that one. But like I'm looking at the list here, and we have one that's 151 units, another one that's 125, another one that's 160. So again, it's not a hard and fast rule, but that's just maybe give you a little flavor of what some of the other deals that have worked under it are. So.
Chad, how has the 4% fix affected your gap resource, or how have you been able to stretch it further?
Well, it's going to help out quite a bit, I think. I mean, it's about a 30% increase with the amount of equity that we can get in deals compared to what we usually got in the past. And what we're doing right now is we're just kind of going back to those deals that are in the pipeline right now and figuring out sort of how we're going to split those savings up. One of the things that we do want to do is try to make sure that we're, you know, conserving our soft resources so that in future funding rounds, we can maybe put out more resources, or we can just, you know, continue to keep putting that out more. But the thing that it definitely will do is, like I said, we had in this round 13 that we have going on right now, we had $8 million of soft resources in it. And with the floating 4% rate, that $8 million would have stretched over, you know, so many deals. Well, with everybody getting the 4% fix, that's going to make all those deals, you know, work that much better. So the hope is that, you know, every deal is just going to need a little bit less gap than what they would have needed before. So I guess one part of the answer is yes, I think it'll free up more gap resources to be able to use going forward, to be able to put out going forward. But the other thing is, I think every deal hopefully is going to need a little bit less gap as well, all things equal, to hopefully stretch everything further too.
Excellent. Any questions from the audience for Chad? Don't be shy. Now's your time to ask him anything you've been meaning to ask him and saving up to ask him for months. All right. Well, hearing nothing, Chad, you're unscathed. I'm sure people really do have questions, but if you do, feel free to reach out directly to Chad. Their team is great about working with you on deals and talking through scenarios and strategies. So feel free to utilize him and his team for that. With that concludes all of our speakers. I don't know if anybody has any general questions or any final things they wanted to ask before we break.
I do have one question
Yeah.
for Invest Detroit. Well, great presentations from everybody, but back to Invest Detroit, on the slide there, it mentioned interest rates at 6% to 8%. Are those the rates for affordable housing? Because typically what I'm seeing in the industry is right now between like 3 and 4%. A lot of lenders price at 90-day LIBOR plus maybe 200 to 300 basis points. So I didn't know if those were the rates that you're applying for multifamily lending.
So that's a great question, Corey. And it really just depends. Frankly, we have some ability to be flexible. I'll be perfectly honest with you, 3 to 4% money is not a space that we typically play in. If you think about the role that Invest Detroit plays, which is typically a subordinate role, which has a much higher risk. And in a lot of cases, we're looking at the 90 to 100% LTV, right? The rate is truly commensurate with the risk that we're taking. And so in a lot of cases, we're not necessarily in a light tech or a truly affordable project. However, we're in projects where affordability is certainly a component and can go as low as we're in projects where the AMI is 50%. So Corey, you're right. That is not in the market for a typical affordable project. We don't necessarily play that space, but if there is something, if it makes sense, there is ability to push and pull. And so I will tell you that we do have some preferred pricing or pricing adjustments for nonprofits, community development organizations, and frankly for persons of color that are doing real estate development.
Gotcha. Great.
I had a question for Victor. With the preservation resources, are they being coupled with 4% deals as well? Are you looking at how to make deals work first through a 4% and then using preservation funds? And then secondly, how will home funds and CDBG dollars also be part of the funding of the preservation of deals, part of the capital stack?
Yeah, thanks, Josh. So none of those things are exclusive or whatever. We can work on deals that have those sources in them. We hope ideally that there will be some preservation deals that don't need to go through an entire resyndication. Sorry, Chad, but that there might be some that don't need that level of investment that wouldn't make it per unit cost or whatever need to go bring in that much equity. So the short answer is yes. Sorry, I'm getting a call here. Sorry. As far as home funds, definitely, although one of the aspects of the fund being created was kind of to spread home funds further, if you will. And so Kelly Vickers talked about this during their, I forget what it's called, but the meeting they held prior to their NOFA opening, or at the point in time their NOFA was opening. that our preferred equity is kind of looked at as a way to stretch their home funds so they wouldn't leverage each other, if you will. So we'd have to get on a call, somebody who's looking at a project and trying to do that, we'd have to talk it through. But there isn't like an ineligible, trigger on any of those sources, if you will.
Any other questions for the group from anybody? Well, hearing none, I do wanted to give everybody, just to let everybody know that Enterprise is on the call as well. So they are leading the Detroit Preservation Team program. And I know I've said this in all the other sessions, but Stacy Esbrook is on. So if you have not met her or have questions about preservation specifically, she is a good resource for everybody to reach out and contact for that as well. So I just wanted to acknowledge Stacy being on here and plug her again for anybody who hasn't been on any of the other sessions to hear that piece of it. So with that, I want to thank all the speakers. Your guys' content was awesome. I will get the slides and send them out to everybody, so you've got that information handy for you. And thanks everybody for participating. This is another great size group, 32 people. We've got a session next week about working with management company owners and management companies working together. And then our 6th and final session is 2 weeks from today, talking about year 15 exit and sort of what that process looks like. So hope to see everybody in the next couple of weeks. And if anybody does have questions or anything, feel free to reach out to any of our staff here, and we'll be glad to help. Thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks for putting it together, Mike.
Yeah, anytime.
Thanks.